Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to implement our login feature to our to-do application using FastAPI. So the first thing we need to do is open up our auth.py file. And at the very top and right under router equals API route, we're going to create a new class of login form. Right under login form, we're going to say def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. And as the parameters, we're going to say self, comma, request of type request. And then we're going to say self.request of type request is equal to request. Self.username of type optional string equals none. And self.password of optional string is equal to none. We then want to create another function called async def create OAuth form of type self. And inside here we want to say form equals await self.request.form. Self.username equals form.getEmail. And self.password equals form.getPassword. And what this is going to do is when we submit an HTML form, we're able to get a username and password. However, when we're doing a OAuth form, we need an email and password. So what we're doing for this create OAuth form is saying for the username and password that we created the login form with, turn the username and say .getEmail and .getPassword so that when we call the username, we're actually getting the email from the form submitted. It's also good to note that the email is actually just a text field. Just OAuth needs the name email for it to properly work. So when we get the text field of email, we're just changing it into username so then we can run our application using a username and password instead of an arbitrary email variable. Let's now scroll back down until we get to our authentication page function. And right under authentication page, let's create a new API request of @router.post of an empty string, comma, response class equals HTML response. Let's create a new function called async def login. And as the parameters, we're going to say request of type request, and then DB of type session equals the dependency of getDB. And then we're going to say try form equals login form request. Await form.create OAuth form. And response equals redirect response. Of type URL of /todos and status code equals status.http 302 found. But we also have to import redirect response and status at the top. And now we need to import redirect response. So from starlette dot responses, import redirect response. And now right above where we see login for access token, we need to create a new parameter of responsive type response. We need to import response from FastAPI. And inside here, when we authenticate our user, if not user, we're raising a token exception. Let's return this to false. Token expires equal time delta. I'm going to change it from 20 minutes to 60. Our token is correct, and here instead of returning a token, I'm going to set a cookie. So I'm going to say response.setCookie, where key is equal to access token, value is equal to the token, and HTTP only is equal to true. And then instead of returning the dictionary of a token, I'm going to return the Boolean of true. And then I'm going to go back down to login, and under response, I'm going to say validate user cookie equals await login for access token. And then as the parameters, response equals response, form data equals form, and DB equals DB. And now I'm going to say, if not validate user cookie, I'm going to add a message which is equal to incorrect username or password. And then I'm going to say return templates.template response to login.html with the context of request and message. Return response. And then accept HTTP exception message, which is equal to unknown error. And then I'm going to say return templates.template response to login.html with the context of request and message. Oh, and it looks like I have a capital S. We want that to be a lowercase s. So what we're doing is when a user tries to submit a login, we validate the user cookie in the login access token, where inside here, we're just passing in the response, setting a cookie if the user is valid with the token, and then returning true or false. If the message is not true, we refresh the login page and pass in a message saying incomplete username or password. If validate user cookie is true, we return the response with the cookie set. If something breaks along the way, we use an except to catch the try except message of unknown error and return back to the login page with a message of unknown error. Let's now jump over to our login.html file. Inside here, the first thing we want to do is go to our form and type in method equals post and action equals /auth. Let's make sure your server is running, resave the file, and let's open up our browser. Let's swap over to our auth page. And here, if we right-click and inspect, and we hop over to our application, and we jump down to our cookies for our application, we can see that there is nothing set. However, if we type in coding with Roby with the password test1234 ! We can see that our JWT token is now saved as a cookie within our app. Now we're still having this all hard-coded with the user of 1, but we're going to have to go back and edit all of our to-do APIs to now validate this token. If the token does not exist, we should return the user back to the login page. Now let's go back to the auth again. If we delete this token, and if we type in a user that does not exist, we're getting an internal server error. So let's go back to our application to send the user back to the login page. Up here where we validate the user, we can see that we're raising false. Let's change this to return false. And now when we return false, we're validating if the user cookie is valid or not, adding a message, and then returning the user back to login. Let's open up our browser, refresh the page, and now if we type in a username and password that does not exist, it refreshes back to the login. But it would be helpful if users knew if there was a reason they were not logged in, whether it's an unknown server error or a failure with the username and password. If we go back to the code and open up our login.html, we can add messages directly to the body. So right under card body, but before the form, let's add a few spaces just so we have room for coding. We're going to say bracket, 2% signs, if message. So we're checking if message exists. And here we're going to code a little bit into the future, but we're going to say bracket, 2% signs, if message equals logout successful, or message equals user successfully created, we're going to print a new div of class alert success with a role of alert and print the message. And we're going to say bracket, 2% signs else underneath of div class alert danger with the role alert with a message. And then we're just going to close off both end ifs. Now let's save the application and go back to our browser. Let's refresh the page. If we type in a fake username again and a fake password, we now get incorrect username or password flashed at the top. However, if we type in a username that exists, we successfully log in by getting a valid JWT token saved as a cookie. This wraps up the login functionality within our to-do full stack application, and I will see you in the next video.